Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we break down your source material to give you those crucial, high value insights, a real shortcut to being genuinely well informed.
And today we're getting into the absolute bedrock of the English language.
We really are. We're looking at three verbs that are so common, so essential to the structure of everything we say that their simplicity is actually pretty deceptive.
We are focusing on just three words: have, has, and had. They are, the silent workhorses of English.
Right. And our source for this is excerpts from Have, Has, Had Essential Usage Guide. And it promises to clear up some of the confusion that honestly trips up everyone from learners to native speakers.
It really does.
So the mission for this deep dive is, well, it's pretty clear. The guide itself asks the one big question: what's the difference?
And we're going to unpack that. We'll get into the three critical grammatical dimensions these words operate in.
Exactly. And we're going to show why mastering these little words is maybe the fastest way for you to immediately elevate your own speaking and writing.
Well, getting clear on these is non-negotiable for effective communication. It's not just about looking sloppy. If you get these wrong, you can, completely change the timeline of a story or misidentify who you're talking about.
Which is a huge error in any kind of formal context.
We have a very high stakes error.
Okay, so let's start unpacking this trio. Have, has, and hand-I.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're not niche. They are the absolute backbone.
They do everything. They show ownership, of course. The classic, I have a book.
Right, or experience. We have traveled widely. But I think the real complexity and where this essential guide must be focusing is their double life.
Their dual functionality.
Yeah. They're not just main verbs, they're also auxiliary or helping verbs.
And that dual function is the absolute key to all of this. As a main verb, the confusion is, let's be honest, pretty limited. It mostly comes down to a simple subject-verb agreement in the present tense.
Okay.
But once they start acting as auxiliaries, especially in what we call the perfect tenses, well, that's when they become the machinery that actually defines the timeline of events.
Hold it. Can you elaborate on that a bit? That functional shift. Why is the helping verb role so much more critical for, an informed speaker to grasp?
Of course. So when have, has, or had is acting as an auxiliary, it links an action from one point in time to another point in time. It creates something linguists call aspect.
Aspect. Okay.
So compare these two sentences. First, I had lunch. Simple past. Had is the main verb.
Straightforward. Happened in the past. Done.
Exactly. Now compare it to this. I have had lunch. That's the present perfect. Here, the auxiliary verb have is telling you that the act of eating lunch is somehow relevant to the present moment. Maybe someone just offered you a sandwich.
Ah, I see. So it's not just about owning something anymore. We're now talking about what temporal geometry. You're placing actions in relation to each other.
That's a great way to put it. And if you miss that auxiliary role, you fundamentally limit your ability to express these complex relationships between actions.
And the source material, by calling itself an essential usage guide, is basically saying that if you can't use these temporal tools, well, the whole structure of your language is compromised.
Precisely.
Okay, so let's tackle the first big structural hurdle that the guide has to deal with, and that person. Why do we even need two forms, have be and has, just for the present tense?
This is the first grammatical trap, and it really boils down to one quirky little corner of the English language.
Which is?
The third person singular in the simple present tense. For almost every other subject, I, you, we, they, we just use have e. But if the subject is he, she, or it, we have to switch to has.
Okay, we're assuming most of our listeners know that basic rule, but the guide must be targeting the common areas where even advanced speakers can get tripped up.
Oh, absolutely. The ambiguity pops up when this subject isn't just a simple pronoun. The guide almost certainly has to get into the weeds on things like indefinite pronouns and compound subjects.
Indefinite pronouns, you mean words like everyone, somebody, nobody?
Exactly. And that's a classic error right there. You hear everyone and you instinctively think it's plural, a crowd of people.
But grammatically, it's singular, so you have to say everyone has a copy of the report, not everyone have.
Precisely. And the guide would have to cover compound subjects too, subjects connected by conjunctions. If you use and, it's plural, the host and the expert have analyzed the sources. Simple enough.
But if you use or nor, it gets tricky.
It does. The verb usually agrees with whatever subject is closest to it. So neither the client nor the CEO has approved the budget because CEO is singular and right next to the verb.
Now, that is where the deep dive value really is. We're moving past the simple she has and into these gray areas where context and tiny words like or totally change the game.
This is the nuance that separates confident communication from, well, tentative phrasing.
What about collective nouns? Things like team or committee? That's another minefield.
It is. In standard American English, the rule is to treat a collective noun as a single entity, so it takes the singular form. The committee has submitted its findings.
So the guide is less about teaching the basic rule and more about mapping out all the exceptions and the structural traps.
It's about giving you the map for when the path gets foggy.
Okay, so let's pivot to the second major hurdle, time. This is where had comes in. Now, on the surface, this looks simpler. In the past tense, everybody's singular, plural, gets ed hay.
The form is simply yes, but the function of Haiti is anything but.
What do you
It's a
think?
critical distinction. Haid serves two very different masters. It can just be the simple past of to have. For example, I had a terrible day yesterday.
Right. Straightforward possession or experience in the past.
But its most crucial role, and the most confusing one, is as the auxiliary verb for the past perfect tense. And that tense requires a really specific understanding of chronology.
So the past perfect. That's had plus the past participle, like had seen or had gone.
Correct. And you can only use it when you're talking about one past event that happened before another specific past event.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting. You're saying you need a chronological anchor in the past. You can't just toss hey D into any old sentence about the past.
You can't. If I say, when I arrived, they left, it sounds like those two things happened at roughly the same time. My arrival caused their departure.
Right.
But if I say, when I arrived, they had left, I am communicating something very different. I'm saying the act of them leaving was already complete before I even got there. It anchors their leaving deeper in the past.
Wow. So that tiny three-letter word, hey D, It completely shifts the timeline and the relationship between those two actions.
That's the power the guide is highlighting. It ensures you're not accidentally taking your listener to the wrong point in history.
And the complexity doesn't stop there, does it? The guide would have to touch on causative verbs.
Inevitably, yes. This is a completely different function where the speaker isn't the one doing the action, but is the one arranging for it.
A causative verb. Give us an example with this triad.
Sure. It's the structure you use to say you arranged for someone else to do something. For example, I have my assistant schedule my meetings. Or in the past, we had the caterer deliver the food an hour early.
So in that sentence, had doesn't mean possession, and it's not the past perfect. It means to cause or to arrange.
Exactly. So if you say, I had the roof repaired, that doesn't mean the repair happened before some other past event. It means you arranged for the repair. The context comes entirely from that structure. Subject plus have had plus an object plus the past participle.
And a sophisticated speaker has to recognize which job head D is doing in any given sentence. Is it possession? Is it past perfect? Or is it causative?
That multiplicity of roles is exactly why the guide is so essential. It brings some order to what feels like linguistic chaos.
Okay, this brings up a really practical point, especially about spoken English. We use contractions all the time. Hives, yas, and in fast speech, how does the guide help you navigate that acoustic blur?
That's a great question. Contractions are notorious for causing confusion. The apostrophe S could be, is, or has, she's happy, versus she's been busy.
And apostrophe could be would or had. I'd like to go versus I'd already left.
Right. The guide forces you to mentally deconstruct that contraction back into its full form. And the moment you do that, all the rules we just talked about, subject verb agreement, tense, they all just click back into place.
That's a powerful way to think about it. If you practice the full forms, have, is, has, had, you're actually training your ear to correctly interpret the short versions you hear in everyday conversation.
You have to know the rules of the full orchestra, so to speak, to understand the abbreviated score. It simplifies by standardizing. It tells you, look past the contraction, find the true function, and then apply the rule.
So, connecting this all back to the big picture, we started with 3 simple words. We've uncovered 2 huge structural hurdles: the complexities of person in the present and the challenge of time with the past perfect.
And the guide's entire value is forcing the user to recognize and resolve the overlap between all these functions.
It's the difference between just speaking English and speaking it with precision.
These 3 verbs are the linguistic anchors for everything. Master them, and you can place any action exactly where it belongs, both in relation to the subject and on the timeline.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've analyzed this critical overlap between have, EE, has, and had D. And the real significance of a guide like this is that it organizes the confusion. It gives you a blueprint for confidence.
Exactly. You're no longer just navigating by feel. You know that if you're in the present, you have to think about person. If you're talking about one past action that happened before another, you know you have to use had to define that sequence.
All right, so for a final thought for you to take away from this, next time you're reading something formal or even just listening to a detailed story, consciously listen for those little contractions.
As and Eddie.
Trying to figure out what they're really standing for. Is it is? Is it has? Is it would? Or, most critically, is it the auxiliary verb had, setting up a whole past perfect timeline? Just think about how much information is being compressed into that single letter choice. Understanding the machinery behind AGE, has, and had is how you start to decode the most complex layers of English.
Until next time.